What if I told you that every month, representatives from 60 of the world's most powerful central banks gather in a building in Switzerland to plan for something that could completely change how we buy groceries, pay our mortgages, or save for retirement? No cameras are allowed inside. No journalists are invited. But what happens in those marble-floored conference rooms in Basel could reshape every dollar in our wallets. Think about this. When was the last time you worried about whether our dollars would be accepted tomorrow? You probably never have, right? That confidence comes from decades of dollar dominance that's so complete, most of us can't imagine any alternative. But what if those central bankers meeting in secret are planning for exactly that? A world where our dollars might not be the global currency everyone wants. These aren't typical monetary policy discussions about interest rates that affect our credit cards. According to the Bank for International Settlement's own meeting schedules, these are crisis preparation sessions where central bankers stress test scenarios that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. The nightmare scenario keeping them awake, a world where the US dollar loses its grip as the global reserve currency within the next decade. Here's what should grab our attention. Christine Lagarde and Jerome Powell aren't debating if this transition will happen. They're planning for when it happens. Documents from central banking conferences reveal that institutions have developed detailed contingency plans for managing international trade without American currency. Our government knows this is coming, but they're not exactly broadcasting it on the evening news. Want proof this isn't theoretical anymore? The World Gold Council's 2025 survey shows that 73% of central banks plan to reduce their dollar holdings over the next 5 years. Why would they do that unless they expected the dollar's value to change dramatically? The Bank for International Settlements has issued guidance to member institutions on developing dollar alternatives through their Innovation Hub projects. These aren't academic papers. They're practical blueprints for transitioning away from the currency system that currently determines whether we can afford gas, groceries, or a vacation abroad. We won't read about these preparations in our usual news sources because revealing them too early could trigger the very financial chaos they're trying to prevent. But the evidence is everywhere if we know where to look. Here's what should concern us. Central bank governors no longer speak in hypotheticals about dollar alternatives. According to recent Federal Reserve meeting minutes, private conversations have shifted from exploring possibilities to coordinating implementation timelines. When the people who control global money stop asking what if and start asking how soon, we should pay attention. Remember when we first heard about Bitcoin and thought digital money was some weird internet experiment? Well, while we were dismissing cryptocurrency, central banks around the world were quietly building something far more powerful, and it's designed to make our dollars optional. In China right now, millions of people are buying their morning coffee, paying subway fares, and receiving government salaries using money that exists purely as code. According to China's central bank, the digital yuan has processed 7 trillion yuan worth of transactions. That's nearly $1 trillion flowing through a system that completely bypasses every bank we've ever used. Let me put this in perspective. In just 12 months, digital yuan transactions nearly quadrupled from 1.8 trillion to 7 trillion yuan, according to People's Bank of China Deputy Governor Lu Lei. Workers across 17 provinces now receive paychecks in digital currency. Students pay university fees with phone taps. An entire parallel monetary system has emerged while we were still figuring out whether to trust Venmo with $20. But here's what should really get our attention. This isn't just happening in China. The European Central Bank accelerated its digital euro timeline far beyond what they've publicly announced. While we're reading headlines about inflation and interest rates, technical teams in Frankfurt are stress testing systems designed to handle the entire European economy running on programmable money. Think about what this means for us personally. Right now, when we want to send money internationally, we probably pay hefty fees and wait days for transfers to clear. These new systems settle transactions in seconds across continents. According to the Bank for International Settlements, their M-Bridge project has reached minimum viable product stage, meaning it can handle real transactions between central banks in real time. Here's the part that should make us pause. Russia and Iran have completed major energy deals using cryptocurrency settlement systems, specifically designed to avoid our currency. We're talking about billion-dollar commodity flows moving through financial architecture that treats the dollar like it doesn't exist. The BRICS nations announced their bridge payment platform, designed to connect member countries without touching the SWIFT system that processes our international payments. Brazil's payment system now links directly to India's networks, China's digital currency, and Russia's financial infrastructure. 23 countries are processing international payments through systems where dollars are optional, not required. But here's what makes this revolution unstoppable. The technology keeps improving while our traditional banking system remains stuck in the 1970s. When we send an international wire transfer, we're using messaging protocols designed before the internet existed. These new platforms use artificial intelligence and quantum cryptography to provide security that our current banks simply cannot match. Want to know something that might shock us? Central banks discovered that digital currencies don't just replace existing money. They make entirely new economic relationships possible. When money becomes programmable code, whoever controls that code controls global commerce. And right now, that's not America. Pop quiz, can you name the economic alliance that represents 45% of the global population and controls 28% of the world's GDP? If you said BRICS, you're ahead of most Americans who have no idea how powerful this alliance has become, or how it's specifically designed to reduce our dollar's global importance. Here's something that should grab our attention. The country that created the petrodollar system by agreeing to sell oil exclusively in dollars, Saudi Arabia, is now actively participating in payment systems designed to bypass dollars entirely. When the nation that made our currency globally dominant starts building alternatives, what does that tell us? Think about this scenario. You're planning a vacation to Europe next year, and you're counting on our dollars being readily accepted everywhere. But what if, by the time you travel, European businesses prefer euros because they can avoid the fees and delays that come with dollar transactions? What if our global currency isn't quite so global anymore? According to the Atlantic Council's CBDC tracker, BRICS nations now conduct over $100 billion annually in energy trades that never touch the dollar system. Russia sells oil to China and receives yuan, which immediately flows into Chinese manufacturing purchases. India pays for Russian oil in rupees, which Russia uses to buy Indian pharmaceuticals. These closed-loop relationships operate completely outside the financial system we rely on. But here's what should really concern us. This coordination extends to military financial defense strategies. BRICS nations conduct joint exercises that simulate coordinated responses to financial sanctions and currency attacks. They're not just building alternatives to our monetary system. They're preparing to defend against economic warfare. The alliance has created parallel institutions that mirror Western financial infrastructure. The new development bank, according to their own reports, has approved $200 billion in non-dollar project financing. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank processes settlements through systems that operate independently of our financial networks. Roads, bridges, and power plants across 3 continents are being built, with money that never flows through American institutions. Want to understand how dramatically this affects us? Trade agreements increasingly include non-dollar settlement clauses as standard provisions. Our country's ability to influence global trade through dollar dominance is being systematically dismantled, one bilateral agreement at a time. Here's the coordination that should worry us most. According to the World Gold Council surveys, BRICS, central banks synchronize their gold purchasing programs to maximize impact on reserve compositions. In 2024 alone, central banks bought over 1,000 tons of gold for the 3rd consecutive year. When one central bank increases gold holdings, others follow coordinated timelines to amplify market effects. Regional commodity trading platforms now process $2 trillion annually through non-dollar systems. The oil that heats our homes, the food in our grocery stores, the materials in our smartphones. Increasingly, these commodities trade through systems where dollars are irrelevant. Every bilateral agreement, every payment system integration, every currency swap facility moves these economies further from dollar dependence. They're not just building alternatives to our monetary system, they're creating a completely parallel global financial system that can operate independently of American oversight. Imagine walking into your job tomorrow and discovering your company restructured its entire international business to avoid using dollars. Sound impossible? It's already happening, and the companies making these changes are saving millions while reducing their dependence on American financial systems. Let me give you a real example that should make this personal. Major German automakers are restructuring billion-dollar procurement deals with Chinese partners to settle entirely in euros and yuan. These aren't small experimental contracts. Entire production lines for the electric vehicle you might buy next year now operate through currency arrangements that never involve dollars. The savings from eliminating currency conversion fees run into hundreds of millions annually. Here's what this means for us. When major manufacturers can operate more efficiently without dollars, what happens to the global demand for our currency? And when global demand for dollars decreases, what happens to the purchasing power in our wallets? The shift is most dramatic in energy markets, and this directly affects the price we pay at the gas pump. According to energy trade reports, Russia's energy exports to China and India now exceed $100 billion annually in non-dollar settlements. The oil flowing to our local gas stations might have been paid for in yuan or rupees, completely bypassing the dollar-based pricing that once guaranteed American influence over global energy costs. Think about our retirement savings or our kids' college funds. Central banks worldwide have fundamentally altered their reserve strategies in ways that directly impact our investments. According to the World Gold Council, Poland increased its gold reserves from 13% to 20% in just 2 years. Turkey, Kazakhstan, and the Czech Republic followed similar patterns. These aren't gradual portfolio adjustments. They're rapid structural shifts away from the dollar-denominated assets that might be in our 401ks. The African Development Bank approved $50 billion in infrastructure financing specifically structured to avoid dollar requirements. Roads, power plants, and telecommunications networks across an entire continent are being built, with money that operates outside the financial system our investments depend on. Here's something that might surprise us. Major shipping companies discovered that accepting payments in multiple currencies isn't just possible, it's more profitable. The container ship bringing goods to our local stores might be paid in euros, yuan, or a dozen other currencies, eliminating the dollar conversion costs that used to be built into every price we pay. Even universities are getting in on this shift. European and Asian institutions now conduct entire financial relationships without touching dollar systems. The international education our children might pursue could operate through currency arrangements where dollars are simply one option among many. Corporate treasuries are quietly restructuring for multi-currency reality. Companies with significant business in BRICS nations maintain separate cash management systems optimized for local currency operations. These parallel treasury functions can continue operating even if dollar-based systems become unavailable or prohibitively expensive. Financial professionals describe a fundamental shift in mindset that should concern every American. 5 years ago, non-dollar transactions required special justification. Today, dollar transactions increasingly require justification for why cheaper, faster alternatives aren't being used instead. The cracks in dollar dominance aren't hypothetical anymore. They're operational realities that affect the prices we pay, the investments we hold, and the economic future our children will inherit. While we've been focused on domestic politics and social media debates, construction crews across 3 continents have been building the backbone of a financial system designed to operate without our dollars. And most Americans have no idea this infrastructure even exists. Deep beneath the Indian Ocean, fiber optic cables are being laid along routes that connect Asia, Africa, and the Middle East, without passing through traditional Western communication hubs. These aren't just internet cables. They're financial arteries designed to carry currency transactions and trade settlements through networks that don't depend on American infrastructure. Here's what this means for us. Right now, many international transactions ultimately flow through systems that America can monitor or influence. These new networks create pathways for global commerce that completely bypass American oversight. Our country's ability to track or influence international money flows is being systematically circumvented. In Singapore, Asia's largest clearing and settlement facility is rising from reclaimed land. When completed, this building will process international transactions worth trillions of dollars annually without routing through New York or London. The next time we wonder why our international transfers take so long and cost so much, remember that other countries are building systems that clear trades in yuan, rupees, and dozens of other currencies in real time. Hong Kong's financial district has been quietly transformed by data centers that house the technical infrastructure for cross-border payment systems that don't need dollars. According to the Bank for International Settlements project reports, these facilities maintain real-time connections to central banks across Asia and the Middle East, creating instantaneous settlement networks that operate 24 hours a day. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank opened its new settlement facility with representatives from 57 countries, celebrating systems that clear international project financing without involving traditional Western institutions. The roads, bridges, and power plants being built across Asia and Africa are funded through mechanisms that treat dollars as optional rather than essential. Physical commodity infrastructure is being redesigned for multi-currency operations in ways that directly affect prices we pay. Strategic petroleum reserves under construction in the United Arab Emirates can price and settle oil transactions in yuan, euros, or local currencies. These facilities don't just store oil, they create physical markets where energy can be bought and sold without dollar pricing affecting the cost of our gasoline. Port facilities across Southeast Asia are installing cargo tracking and settlement systems that integrate directly with regional currency networks. The shipping container bringing goods to our local store can be released and paid for in local currencies, with automatic conversion handled by systems that never touch dollar-based infrastructure. Insurance markets have undergone their own quiet revolution that affects our economic security. Lloyd's of London now offers policies that protect Asian companies against dollar volatility rather than local currency risk. A complete reversal that signals how dramatically global finance is shifting away from dollar-centric models. The scale of investment in this parallel infrastructure should concern every American. Conservative estimates suggest over $200 billion has been committed to financial infrastructure projects specifically designed to reduce dollar dependence. This isn't speculative investment. It's practical spending on systems that are already operational. What makes this infrastructure revolution unstoppable is its practical necessity. As trade volumes grow between non-Western economies, the infrastructure to support that trade must exist somewhere. Since existing systems are designed around dollar dominance, new infrastructure naturally emerges to serve economic relationships that don't need American participation. The foundation for a post-dollar financial system isn't being planned, it's being built. And every cable, server, and facility reduces global dependence on the monetary system that currently supports our economic lifestyle. Have you noticed that financial headlines have stopped asking if the dollar will lose its dominance and started asking when and how quickly? That subtle shift in language reveals something profound. We've crossed the point where this transition has become inevitable. Listen carefully to recent statements from central bank governors around the world. They've stopped speaking in hypotheticals about dollar alternatives. When Poland's central bank announces its intention to reach 20% gold reserves by a specific date, when China discusses digital yuan interoperability targets with precision, when Brazil outlines real peso trade facilitation schedules, these aren't aspirational goals anymore, they're implementation timelines. Here's what should grab our attention. According to the Atlantic Council's CBDC tracker, by 2026, central bank digital currencies will achieve interoperability across more than 40 countries. This isn't a prediction, it represents technical specifications that have been tested and validated. While we're still figuring out how to use Apple Pay, 40 nations are coordinating the launch of currency systems designed to work without dollars. Training programs for monetary officials have fundamentally shifted in ways that should concern every American. Central bankers now receive instruction on managing multi-currency transition, scenarios, and maintaining economic stability during periods of reserve currency rebalancing. They're not learning about theoretical possibilities. They're preparing for expected realities. International trade agreements signed in the past 18 months include non-dollar settlement clauses as standard provisions rather than special accommodations. Think about what this means for our economic future. The world is defaulting to non-dollar arrangements, with dollar settlements requiring additional justification. Emergency financial protocols now exist that can activate dollar-free operations within hours rather than months. BRICS nations maintain active currency swap facilities and coordinated intervention mechanisms that can provide liquidity during financial system transitions. These aren't theoretical arrangements, they're operational systems that get tested regularly through coordinated exercises. Consider how dramatically crisis simulations have evolved. 3 years ago, central banks conducted stress tests asking, how might our economy survive if dollar systems became unavailable? Today's exercises operate from a completely different premise. They assume dollar alternatives are readily available and focus on optimizing transitions between different monetary arrangements. Perhaps most revealing is what officials have stopped saying. Gone are the diplomatic reassurances about maintaining dollar-based relationships. Missing are the emphatic statements about preserving existing international financial architecture. Instead, central bankers describe post-dollar arrangements with the same matter-of-fact tone they once reserved for discussing interest rate adjustments. This shift reflects an economic reality that can no longer be reversed. When alternative payment systems can handle trillions in annual volume, when emergency protocols can maintain stability during monetary transitions, when entire trade relationships operate profitably outside dollar systems, the infrastructure creates its own gravitational pull. We've reached the point where abandoning these alternatives would be more disruptive than implementing them. The question isn't whether our dollar will lose its global dominance, it's how quickly the transition will happen, and whether America will adapt successfully to a world where dollars are just one currency option among many. Imagine waking up in 2030 to discover that international commerce operates so efficiently without dollars that using them seems as outdated as sending a fax. This isn't science fiction. It's the logical outcome of trends already reshaping global finance, while most Americans aren't paying attention. Picture yourself planning that European vacation you've been saving for. Instead of worrying about exchange rates and foreign transaction fees, you discover that your bank offers instant currency conversion at rates better than anything available today. European businesses prefer local currency transactions because they're faster and cheaper than dollar-based payments. Your travel experience improves because you're not forced to use a currency system designed for American convenience rather than global efficiency. A coffee exporter in Brazil receives payment in reais from a German buyer, then immediately uses those funds to purchase equipment from India, all settled in under 3 minutes without any dollar conversion. The German buyer sourced the coffee through supply chain applications that automatically optimize currency routing, finding the most efficient payment path through interconnected digital networks spanning 4 continents. What does this mean for our daily lives? The coffee in our morning cups, the components in our smartphones, the energy that powers our homes, all increasingly flow through commerce systems where dollars are optional rather than essential. This doesn't mean dollars disappear, but it does mean they lose the privileged position that has subsidized American economic lifestyle for decades. Central banks operate with coordination that previous generations could never have imagined. When market stress appears in Asian currency markets, automatic stabilization protocols activate across multiple countries simultaneously. Digital currency flows adjust in real time based on algorithmic coordination between central banks that share information instantaneously. Here's what this coordination means for our investments and savings. Currency markets become more stable because they're not dependent on the decisions of any single country, including America. Our retirement portfolios benefit from reduced currency volatility, but they also become more vulnerable to shifts away from dollar-denominated assets. Regional economic zones achieve levels of integration that seemed impossible under dollar-dominated systems. Southeast Asian manufacturers source components from Latin American suppliers using currency arrangements that adapt automatically to trade flows. African infrastructure projects receive financing from Asian development banks through mechanisms designed for long-term partnerships, rather than American financial convenience. The transformation extends beyond technical efficiency to fundamental shifts in economic leverage that affect our country's global influence. Smaller nations that once had minimal input into global monetary decisions now participate as equal partners in currency arrangements that serve their interests rather than American priorities. International commodity markets evolve into sophisticated multi-currency ecosystems where prices reflect actual supply and demand rather than currency manipulation strategies. This means the prices we pay for gasoline, food, and consumer goods become more directly connected to real economic factors rather than monetary policy decisions made in Washington. This new financial architecture hasn't eliminated the dollar, but it has ended the dollar's exclusive dominance. American currency remains important for certain transactions, but it becomes one option among many rather than the only practical choice for international commerce. For us, this means America loses some economic advantages, but gains access to more efficient global systems. What makes this transformation unstoppable is that it serves the interests of too many people in too many countries. Businesses save money on currency conversion. Governments gain monetary sovereignty. Central banks achieve greater coordination capability. Citizens benefit from more efficient international commerce. The evidence surrounds us if we know where to look. Every central bank digital currency implementation, every bilateral trade agreement with local currency provisions, every infrastructure project financed through non-dollar arrangements moves the global economy further toward this multipolar reality. The transition to a post-dollar world isn't a distant possibility that might happen someday. It's the current reality that most Americans simply haven't recognized yet. The new world of international finance is already taking shape around us, one transaction at a time. The question isn't whether this transformation will affect our economic future. It's whether we'll recognize it in time to adapt successfully to these changes. Understanding these shifts isn't about fear, it's about awareness. The more we understand what's happening, the better we can navigate the financial world that's emerging around us.